Catholic Charities Bloomington 8th Annual Benefit. Our theme is Mental Health Recovery Happens Together. My name is Robin Gress, and I'm the president of the Catholic Charities Bloomington Agency Council. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you this evening. As you know, Catholic Charities Bloomington has long held an annual breakfast, usually in the spring, to update the community on our services and to ask for support. But this year, as you well know, coming together physically was simply not possible, given the difficulties associated with COVID-19. And yet, we have a lot to tell you. So the question was, how to do it? How can we reach our staunchest supporters, those of you who have stood by us and the work we do over the years? And this is what we came up with, an online event to bring to you a very special speaker and a chance to fill you in on the latest news at Catholic Charities Bloomington. Those of you who know me know that I am totally committed to supporting the work of Catholic Charities Bloomington. The fact that you're here tells me that you too care about those struggling with mental health issues and that you embrace those who need our help. Before we begin our program, I'd like to introduce my fellow panelists, all of whom you will hear from shortly. First, I am extremely pleased to welcome poet and storyteller Madison Gonzalez, who will tell us about her journey out of postpartum depression and anxiety. Also joining me at our virtual podium is David Bethurum, Executive Director of Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis, and O'Connell Case, Clinical Director of Catholic Charities Bloomington. Finally, before we begin, I would like to take just a moment to recognize three very special groups of people. The first, CCB's therapists and staff members. They are the ones who carry out the real work of CCB. To hear them talk about what they do and how they do it is to get a first-rate lesson in compassion, professionalism, and dedication. We are very proud of them. Then there are my fellow members of the Catholic Charities Bloomington Agency Council, who give their time, their talent, and their resources in support of the agency. Many people ask me what we do as volunteers at a mental health agency, since we're not therapists, we're not social workers, we're not mental health experts. What we are advocates, friend raisers, and fundraisers. We care deeply about the work of Catholic Charities Bloomington and the people it supports and the welfare of the whole community. I invite any of you looking for a way to fight poverty, create hope, and to serve all to consider joining the council. Interested? Please let me know. And of course, I would like to recognize and thank the sponsors of this afternoon's program. Shirley Boardman, Leanne and Steve Luce, Tom and Emily Schwen, Golzer Investments, Ivy Tech Bloomington, and Our Lady of the Springs Parish. We are very grateful for their support. I wanted to give you a little context for this afternoon's program. The National Alliance on Mental Illness says that even before the COVID-19 crisis began to cast its long shadow, 1 in 5 Americans was living with a mental health condition. Since the onset of the virus, the demand for mental health care services has soared, prompting Chuck Ingoglia, Chief Executive of the National Council of Behavioral Health, to note, and I quote, "This is the greatest crisis to ever hit community mental health and addiction treatment providers." He went on to predict, and again I quote, the nation will experience a profound aftershock of widespread anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. Untold numbers of people, including our own family members, friends, and colleagues, are worried about their own health and the health of their loved ones, while trying to balance and cope with job losses, severe disruptions of routines, and fear of an unknown future. C. Vale Wright, Director of Clinical Research and Quality at the American Psychological Association, told the Wall Street Journal that the tremendous uncertainty around the outbreak will fuel the feelings of hopelessness and helplessness that are the hallmarks of depression. Depression is something today's speaker knows all too well. Madison Gonzalez is a poet, public speaker, and winner of the Storyteller of the Year award. She is a mother, daughter, sister, and friend, and while always family comes first, she also loves celebrations and bubble baths, detoxing and Merlot, and spending time at the ocean, and of course, poetry. Madison turned to writing as a form of healing after her crippling battle with postpartum depression and anxiety following the birth of her son. She now says that if anyone had predicted that posting her first poem about her battle with depression on social media would lead to a major newspaper, would lead to a major newspaper feature, a best-selling poetry book, and a speaking role at an international authors conference within 9 short months, she would have laughed out loud. Today, Madison is passionate about giving others the tools and the confidence of their own to share their stories as well. Please welcome Madison Gonzalez.
Thank you so much, Robin. I am so very grateful to be here tonight with all of you. It's such an honor to, be able to speak about my journey of healing and to be a part of such an amazing cause. So before I get into my story of struggle, I do think it's important to note that everybody's struggles look different. Some of us struggle with mental health issues, some addiction, maybe relationship issues, work stresses. So as I'm sharing my story of struggle, I also want to, encourage you to think about what you faced, what your loved ones are facing, and know that healing is possible for everybody. I do have some slides I'd like to share, so I'm going to share my screen here. Give me just one moment to get this started. Okay, so this is called Stories Heal because I'm so passionate about storytelling and what it did in my life. So I suffered severe postpartum depression and anxiety after my son was born. So this is the story that I'm going to tell you today. And during my battle, I completely lost sight of who I was. I no longer knew who Madison Gonzalez was, and it took 2 whole years for me to find myself again. But it was the most loss that I'd ever felt in my whole life. It came as a complete shock because after my first child, Julia, was born, she's my daughter, life was bliss. I felt like super mom. I did all the good mom things, I took her to the library and we went to the park and I kept my temper and sang to her and, I ate right and stayed healthy and life was bliss. So, it came as a complete shock when my son Bennett was born 2 years later, because I almost immediately could just feel this sense that this was going to be a different experience this time. That's him there. And I remember the very first day I couldn't stop crying in the hospital bed holding, my brand new baby because I felt this dark cloud like physically descending on me. Depression, it can be a physical thing, right? It's a physical thing. And I love my son with every fiber of my being, but after he was born, my life became pretty difficult to bear for a while. Most people wouldn't know it by looking at me because I was pretty good at hiding it. Anxiety and depression can look just like this. And this was actually the day that my kids started preschool, because I just couldn't do the stay-at-home mom thing anymore. It was too difficult. But, people didn't know I was struggling, because all the pictures I would post, all the posts I would post, interactions with me, they seemed happy. And many who struggle with depression and anxiety are masters at hiding it. But I wasn't being authentic to my truth. I felt like a phony, because the reality is I was completely overwhelmed. From day one, I started having frequent crying spells. It became hard to be happy anymore. I was constantly feeling stressed. I was feeling trapped. And even though my newborn son was keeping me awake at all hours of the night, I suffered from severe insomnia on those limited hours that I was actually able to try to get some rest. So the combination of, the postpartum imbalanced hormones and my lack of sleep, it just made life very difficult to manage. It's a really horrible feeling when you know that there's something wrong with you, when you're completely aware, that you're not in control of your emotions and your thoughts at the moment. You feel out of control, but you also don't know what to do about it. So about 6 months in, my crying spells turned into daily panic attacks. And that's where the anxiety came in. And despite at least 4 trips to the doctor, I just wasn't getting any better. I would constantly call my family and my friends, and I would say, I just don't think I can do this anymore. I didn't feel like I had value. I didn't feel like I was making a difference or a contribution. In fact, I actually felt like a burden. And I felt hopeless. I was convinced that this was just who I was now and how life would be for me. And, I thought maybe this is just the new me. And that's what losing hope can feel like, because depression and anxiety can have this way of compounding on themselves, because you become kind of obsessed with trying to cure them. And when you're not seeing results, you just start to feel like, maybe this is just who I am. But this is not the end of my story, not even close. And I do want to take a moment to emphasize this piece of the story, because healing doesn't necessarily happen overnight. It's not a one and done kind of process. It's a whole process, and it can take some time. The frequent, trips to the doctor felt really disheartening for me, because even though we were trying different medications and we were trying different, techniques, I just wasn't getting any better yet, being the key word. I wasn't getting better yet. And at this time, I'd like to share a poem from my poetry book, Dear Mirror, about healing. And it says, healing hurts, it aches, it itches. You'll have to sit on your hands to stop picking those scabs, but the scars that remain after all of that pain will be the cracks through which your brightest light shines through. I had to cling to my motivations and my reasons for persevering, which for me were my children. They needed me, and that was enough for me to keep trying to get better. And thanks to my family and thanks to my friends, I was able to get the resources and also the time that I needed to get better. The right support was everything for me. It helped me find my spark again, because many of us really can't do that on our own as much as we want to. So I decided to go back to work part-time. I changed my environment, and with the right combination of self-care, support groups, medication, therapy, and then that changed environment, I was able to heal. But again, ultimately, it comes down to resources, and it comes down to support. Support like Catholic Charities offers. Everybody deserves that right. Everybody deserves the right to feel healthy and to feel supported and to feel strong, regardless of age, situation, or especially financial circumstances. Admittedly, my story did not look the way that I always thought it would. Ever since I was in high school, I had planned on being, this super stay-at-home mom until my kids were old enough to go to school. And I felt like I was admitting defeat, when I decided to make some of these changes and go back to work. But I realized that I have to humble myself down and recognize that sometimes our lives don't always go as we planned. I also want to emphasize too that, I don't place any judgment on stay-at-home moms or working moms. Everybody has their own path, their own journey. Look different. I'm just speaking from my experience of what I thought life was going to look like for me. The cool thing that I took was a job at a nonprofit organization. And to be honest, that's when my life really started to click. It's when it really started to change. You know, you can call it destiny or serendipity or fate or obviously, you know, divine intervention. But the crippling postpartum that I experienced that forced me into going back to work is actually one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because it really helped show me some of my strongest passions, where I can make an impact and where I can find some of the greatest fulfillment that I've found. If I had not been at such a low, I would have never made the changes that helped me realize some of my truest worth and truest value. Life's funny like that, because sometimes it is our pain that pushes us towards our purpose. Consider how the world would change if everyone at their low could have a transformation that prompted them with such conviction and purpose that they now use their newfound power and that newfound light to be a light for others. It's a ripple effect. That's the power of one. We don't just change that one life by giving someone support and resources. We can change the entire community by doing so. So as my introduction said, I am a poet, I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a storytelling consultant. And for me, this is the part of my story where storytelling really comes full circle as to why I'm so absolutely undeniably passionate about it. Reflecting on my story helped me to see why I had to go through some of the agony that I had to go through. And I remember sitting in my car one day, you know, hands on the steering wheel, thinking, like we do often when we're at our steering wheels, you know, how grossly under-discussed postpartum depression and anxiety is. I remember how lonely I felt as I was going through it. I felt like, you know, I have to be the only mom in the world struggling this way. And, you know, finally I decided, you know, maybe if I share my story, if I bring my darkest days to light, and that could just help, you know, one mom feel like maybe, you know, she's not so alone, then it was definitely worth my vulnerability. And I decided to share my story. And I wrote a poem about postpartum and about my experience called The Pit. And I posted it on Facebook. And I was absolutely shocked at the traction and the response that it got. And I'd like to share that poem with you now. This is the poem that really started it all for me. Again, it's called The Pit. The pit to the cherry, the pit in my stomach, soft, juicy sweetness interrupted by an unwelcome stone. Impossible to chew, I can only swallow it whole. I want to spit it out, but it's too late. I feel the pit lodge in my throat before sinking down to my core. And suddenly the weight of the pit is crushing me. I'm choked up and weighed down all at once. It's hard to breathe or move or smile or even cry. I can feel the pit's poison spreading. I am angry and sad and confused. I wanted to savor this cherry. I planted the seed, I grew the tree, I climbed the limbs, I picked the fruit. I worked for this and waited for this season of my life. This perfect cherry deserving of appreciation and adoration, and instead, the pit. The dark, cold, all-consuming pit of despair. Surviving the pit took all of the strength I didn't know I had. But I don't blame the cherry, in fact. The cherry is the most rewarding bite I will ever take out of life. So after I posted that poem, within weeks I was contacted by the Indy Star newspaper here in Indianapolis and featured as an up-and-coming poet. The Indianapolis Review published that poem. And I decided, you know, I'm going to keep writing and I'm going to keep sharing. And my poetry gained traction and I published a book and it hit bestseller. And within 9 months, I started speaking nationally. And this is all because I made the decision to share my story. I was not how, you know, many would define an expert on postpartum. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a counselor. You know, and as I said before you, I'm not a mental health educator. But I am a human who's been through it and survived. And that's enough to make a difference and an impact, because people didn't care that I hadn't studied postpartum in med school. You know, they just appreciated the realness of someone sharing vulnerability. The truth is we're all craving authenticity and connection. And sometimes sharing our struggles can create these bonds that we never could have imagined before, and can also help us find this undeniable sense of purpose. I have a poem in my book that expresses how I feel about this sentiment as well, and I'd like to share that an excerpt of the poem now, which says, "For if we can't chart our chapters and shout them from mountains, then what is the point of reaching the peak? Trust me when I tell you the answers to the questions, who are you and why, are worth the climb." I'd also like to share an article that was written and published by Psychology Today, titled "Resilience and the 4 Benefits of Telling Your Story." I think that this article does a beautiful job explaining why storytelling, really helped impact my life. And as suggested by the title, it lists 4 major reasons why telling your story is so important. I think this can also extend to why therapy and self-reflection can be so healing for so many, because much of therapy is reflecting on our stories and maybe seeing them through new eyes. Giving somebody the ability to express themselves is just an invaluable thing. And doing so can help shift that mindset, that perspective, and help us find strength and help us heal. So the first reason that Psychology Today says it's so important is realizing your story can benefit someone else. How many of us have heard a story that's inspired us, caused us to think a little differently, maybe empowered us to change our lives, because we saw how something impacted someone else? We've all seen that. From an early age, we observe and we replicate what we see around us. And if we see someone struggling with our same symptoms and decide to implement certain changes because we saw how it, changed their circumstance, then we've been impacted by a powerful story. Have you ever shared an experience and at the end of which someone said, "Thank you for shedding light on that. I never thought of it that way," or, "Finally something I can relate to"? If you have, you know how good that feels to build that connection. And if you haven't, it really is just a matter of time. Reason number 2, it helps you make sense of life's events and find your own voice. So, it helps us change our perspective from, this is happening to me, to this happened to me and I survived. Or even, this is happening to me and I am surviving, or I am thriving. That paradigm shift can be everything for growth. Many of us have had to encounter things that we just didn't deserve. Life has thrown us things that should have never happened. But it's how we handle these things that truly writes our story. It is not the circumstance that defines the character, but that character's response. Our struggles can show us parts of ourselves we may have never volunteered to meet, given the choice. However, overcoming them introduces us to parts of ourselves that we may never want to live without, given the chance. Making sense of your life's events involves understanding how you can use them to propel yourself and others forward. So really taking that time to stop and see all the things you've overcome, all the ways that you've overcome your obstacles, will help you show yourself how strong you really are. And that strength can be applied to your mindset, in career, in relationships, and in life as a whole. Our stories not only can teach and benefit others, but they can teach ourselves things that we didn't realize we needed to learn. Whatever the purpose of your life's events, telling the story can help you view them in a different way. So reason number 3, reaffirming your values and your beliefs. See, when we reflect on our lives, we start to notice these golden strands of values and beliefs. You see what's really important because you're able to identify consistencies throughout your story. You get to witness your decisions from a narrator perspective, and you can start to kind of realize certain, characteristics may be more prevalent than you might have thought at first. Identifying your values and beliefs is important to determining your purpose, and your story has been kind of leaving you these breadcrumbs all along. And reason number 4, finding peace and hope. This really brings all the points to a head today. Healing is about finding peace and gaining hope. Seeing your story make the difference in, your own life and in the lives of others can really help do both of these things. Reflection on our story shows us all the things we've overcome and can even provide a direction for your future and your newly recognized values. Setting your story free with intention will change your life in ways you could never imagine. I promise that. So I do want to leave you with a few tips and takeaways from my talk today. Takeaway number 1 is through support from family and friends, changes to environment or situation, maybe medication and therapy, healing is possible. Healing is possible. And takeaway 2 is healing takes time. Just like a broken bone, mental health can take lots of therapy and lots of patience before life feels manageable again, but it will feel manageable again. And the resources are out there and everyone deserves access to them, just like Catholic Charities provides. Takeaway 3, you can't see stars if there is no darkness. So your purpose can often be derived from your pain. Takeaway 4, it's important to use your story to empower and encourage others. And takeaway 5, there is power in one. If we just heal one person, that person can heal another person. That person can give light to another person. And the ripple effect starts to heal a community as a whole. I want to end today with a quote from one of my favorite speakers, Lisa Nichols. And her quote is, "It is not in spite of your past that you get to be amazing. You get to be a change agent and you get to transform lives. It is because of your past that you are perfect for such a job." I know that each and every one of you here today has an interest in making a difference and changing lives and being a change agent simply because you're here and you're listening. And my invitation to you is to see how you can do that by supporting others through, organizations like this one, and maybe by telling your own stories. Thank you guys so much for listening, and thank you for your time.
Madison, thank you so much for sharing a powerful presentation with us. I think that you brought up some very important elements to what we're about and what we're doing in Catholic Charities. But I think the idea of everyone has a story is very, very important. A lot of times we don't think we're very important people. But if we look at things through God's eyes and our relationship with other people, our stories have a great impact. And so your information about why stories are important led to my understanding of why healing is such an important process. Healing that's needed is those that come from the kind of support that you have. And you talked about the importance of family and friends, and really in the support of skilled helpers, people like therapists and doctors and others that could really be able to help you move through that process of healing to be able to have move towards self-determination, what you want to be, what goals you have, and what you need to attain. So thank you so much for sharing such a wonderful story. For those that are on with us, Catholic Charities has a sub-logo, if you will. It says Catholic Charities, and underneath it says providing help, creating hope, and serving all. What I find really interesting about that is that I think you touched on all of those particular areas. Those are things that are real to us. The stories that you share with the staff at Catholic Charities Bloomington are listened to very carefully. And being listened to helps you understand that someone cares, someone is worried about, and is also there to help you get through your situation, whether that situation is a crisis, whether it is anxiety or depression, or a short-term problem that you might have. All of those are very, very important. And if you have someone like very skilled workers that work at Catholic Charities in Bloomington, you'll be able to notice how wonderful it is to have someone partner with you in being able to heal and be able to move on to your self-determination. I don't know anyone more that has those gifts than our clinical director, Wakano Case. She is absolutely a wonderful person, skilled, and she is a great person to work with other staff to be able to do the things that are best for our clients. We are about people, not about our programs. Our programs are there for our people that we're there to serve. So please welcome O'Connell Case.
Thank you, David. You have just heard Madison's inspiring story of mental health recovery. What her journey shows us is that recovery, while not necessarily easy, but is absolutely possible. Her account also shows us yet again that mental health recovery happens together. The staff and therapists at Catholic Charities Bloomington have the privilege of witnessing mental health recovery daily. Let me tell you a few stories. There's the family that long dreamt of adopting a child, but when they do, discovers that there are attachment issues that prevent him from connecting with them emotionally. After working with CCB, the son learns to trust his adoptive parents and grows closer to his new family. He resolves his trauma and is now flourishing in school. That's a common thread that we see with adoptive parents. There's the teenager, riddled with so much anxiety that she does not want to go to school. In fact, she wants to drop out entirely. After working with CCB, she overcomes her anxiety and proudly returns to school to finish her education. Thinking about an adult that has had mental health recovery. There's an adult that I worked with that had severe trauma. He felt like he was broken and that he needed to be on disability. After receiving trauma treatment at CCB, the man is now working and flourishing in all aspects of his life. He no longer believes he needs to have disability. And these are just a few of the stories to give you just an example of the mental health recovery. It happens every day at CCB. I can tell you that it is an honor and a privilege to work together with our clients. It's also an honor and privilege to work together with the local community support of mental health recovery. We would especially like to thank our individual donors, the Bloomington Health Foundation, the Community Foundation of Bloomington and Monroe County, the United Way, Monroe County's Sophia Travis Grant, and the City of Bloomington for their continued support. It is this support that enables us to accomplish our mission of increasing access to mental health services. Again, we do this together by partnering with other nonprofit agencies in the community to bring services and programs to their clients and their agencies. In the past year, we have partnered with the Boys and Girls Club to provide training and consultation to help staff identify kids that might need mental health support. We also provide parenting groups that help the whole family at New Hope for Families and Boys and Girls Club. We provide therapy at Fairview Elementary Schools, where we partner with teachers and parents. The Fairview program has grown from 20 children a few years ago to 32 this past year. Additionally, we're working on a project that will provide individual parent coaching, regardless of whether their child is in therapy or not. Together with our community, we have also been able to add additional staff with the generous support of a grant from the Jack Hopkins Social Services Fund and United Way COVID Crisis Fund. 2 years ago, we had 6 therapists. Today, thanks to the grants, we're up to 9, which has increased our capacity to serve clients by 30%. Why is this so important? It is vital because we are one of the just a few providers in our community that can offer play therapy and theraplay techniques to children under the age of 5. And we're one of the few providers that accepts all forms of Medicaid. We strongly believe that it does not matter how much money or what kind of insurance you have. Everyone needs access to quality mental health care. So CCB had to respond quickly when the COVID-19 pandemic came so that we would be able to continue to provide services to our clients. Thanks to United Way COVID-19 response grant, we were able to quickly purchase needed laptops and software to make sure our clients did not suffer any pause in services. Our nimble staff went home with the equipment and did not miss a beat. Telehealth has been a game changer, wiping out barriers to treatment posted by distance, transportation issues, and even missing work. They could go to their car and have a session and go back into work. Telehealth has expanded our reach to rural areas where there are fewer resources. It allows us to engage with families more easily and even provide treatment with clients who are traveling. And telehealth is opening a door to another opportunity. Drawing on the staff's wide-ranging experience in various trauma and treatment therapies, we're working on a plan to create videos and webinars in which we can provide tools to the community, our partners, and the clients themselves, demonstrating that mental health recovery is not a remote dream, but a very possible option for everyone. Each person's journey out of the darkness of mental health issues is unique, and we are grateful to be able to answer the call to participate in that experience. We invite you to join with us to make recovery possible for all by considering a gift to Catholic Charities Bloomington. Are you curious about the difference your contribution can make? You can see on the slide that there are various ways to do this. You can do it with one check. You can have a monthly giving that has an impact for all year long. We appreciate anything that you can contribute to us. And giving couldn't be easier. Visit ccbin.org and click on Give Now. It's that easy. If you would like to mail a check, they should be made payable to Catholic Charities Bloomington, and you see the address. Put annual benefit in the memo line, and we really appreciate it. If you would like to remember us as to your will or make a gift of stock, please check the box on the donation page. Our development director, Sherry Bush, will contact you. If you'd like to know what we're doing and would like to stay in contact, you can sign up for our newsletter by clicking the e-news button on our website. We really appreciate your support, and we'd like to thank again the generous sponsors of our event, Tom and Edwin Schwinn, Shirley Boardman, Leanne and Steve Luce, Geyser Investments, Ivy Tech Bloomington, and Our Lady of Springs Parish. We have enjoyed spending this time with you and look forward to making mental health recovery happen together. We hope you will stay with us for the question and answer portion of our program. If you have any questions, for our panel, please feel free to submit them. We already have questions. We have a question for Madison. Madison, can you tell us how you decided to seek treatment? And do you have any fear or concern that you had to overcome in order to ask for help?
Yeah, so in my instance, I really knew pretty immediately for myself the difference between, you know, my first child, how I felt, my second child, how I felt. It was such a stark difference that I thought pretty quickly, like, I think there's something going on here. I'm very lucky because I actually grew up in a household where, you know, my dad is a therapist, and so, you know, mental health was talked about. I mean, that's a blessing in my life. Was, you know, that kind of stigma with it wasn't quite there for me, which is why, you know, I love talking about it and encourage other people to talk about it too, so that other people don't have to feel like that. But I do think that admitting that there's something wrong can kind of open the door a little bit to fear of, well, what if I can't fix it? So, you know, if you admit something's wrong and you go, okay, like, I'm not in denial anymore, there's something wrong, there's still that little chance of doubt in your mind. And I think overcoming that is a beast in itself, because, you know, once you're admitting there's something there, you're like, okay, there's some work that needs to be done here. But it is important to do. And, you know, like my story said, it's a good thing that I did it, because I was able to kind of tackle it.
Thank you, Madison. O'Connell, we have two questions for you, and maybe we can combine them. One is, how does one go about getting services at CCB, and what has changed with the COVID virus?
Okay. It's simple. You call our office if you would like to receive services. You call, it's 812-332-1262. I'm so glad I remembered that. And ask to request services. And the front desk will take it from there. What is different right now is that everyone is still home, and we're doing all our services by telehealth. We're coming in periodically to do a little bit of work, but all the work at this point is by telehealth.
Thank you. That's terrific. Someone wants to know if the panel could offer any suggestions on how to approach another person who you feel is experiencing anxiety and or depression, to encourage that person to get help. We'll leave this to the professionals, I think.
Well, how about from someone who's experienced it? Madison, how would someone have been able to encourage you to get help?
I think supporting them, you know, it's not just, I think you should get help, but also I will go on this journey with you so you don't have to be alone, was very important to me. It can be scary if someone kind of just suggests that you need help, and then you're like, okay, well, that's lonely and that's a little scary. But I do think, you know, I care about you and I'm noticing a difference in you. But I'll hold your hand through it was helpful to me as someone who's been through it.
Absolutely. Walking beside them is the key.
How about if it's a child? If it's either your child, maybe a relative, or a child you know of who you think may need help, how can help be directed to that child?
So for children, we have to be careful that it's not because they think they're broken. We don't want to give that message, and we want to not make them feel like they've done something wrong, because sometimes kids think that they're coming for punishment. But to be able to say, you know, I see you're struggling, and I have an idea of someone who might be able to help us. And be able to say, depending on the age of the kid, but could say, you know, let's try this resource, and if you don't like it, we don't have to continue. But you deserve, we will get you all the help you need.
It's so hard when it's kids. Hard to figure out how to communicate. Has Catholic Charities been able to reach beyond Bloomington, what with telehealth and all? In particular, someone asks, what about providing services in Brown County?
Absolutely. We are now in a position to provide services by telehealth in Brown County. In fact, we are doing some of that. So it doesn't matter whether it's in Bloomington or Monroe or Brown County. I was, at this point, we're able to even provide services in Colorado. I had a client who didn't even tell me that they were in Colorado or going to Colorado. And when they answered the telehealth, they happened to be in Colorado. So the location doesn't matter, not at all. And one of the things that fascinates me about telehealth is that before, people had to leave work, get off early, and drive to our office, and or go in late. Now they can go to their car or go to a quiet place at work and have the session and go back. Really very accessible.
We've received a question about some of the operational sides of Catholic Charities Bloomington. What are the broad strokes of the CCB budget?
Broad strokes of the budget. Well, let's see. It's a thin line. It's a thin line. We've been, first of all, our commitment is to provide services and not have finance be the barrier. So we do sliding fee, and we also take insurance, and we take all forms of insurance. So I can't tell you offhand exactly what their percentage is, but I can tell you that insurance doesn't usually cover the salaries of the therapist. But we serve about 70% on Medicaid. We have some grants that we get, and we have donations that, like, our donors really help us to do that. You think that's what the question is, do you think?
I think so. I think it's getting a sense of where we focus our funds and how we're doing. How many clients are seen, let's say, in a given month?
Well, I can tell you in a year we see about 950.
Okay.
And we provide 7,500 sessions in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say monthly around 700 sessions.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And I believe that you've been quite successful in obtaining a number of grants lately.
Yes, yes. We have, we've had 3 grants from United Way. The first one was the laptop, the one that purchased all the laptops, because we were just using desktops at work, and all of a sudden we had to be home with video and all kinds of different software. So we, United Way gave us that grant, gave us a grant to provide another therapist and some other equipment. Let's see, Community Foundation gave us some money for just to help with payroll, and some other equipment and software and training. And Jack Hopkins gave us the money for another therapist. So being up to 9 therapists. I don't know if I've left out. Sophia Travis is going to fund a parenting consult where a parent can call in and make an appointment, not be a client, just call in and have an hour of parenting strategy with a therapist. And also United Way has granted us money to support the nonprofit employees, because you can imagine the stress that they have been under through this. They've been on the line and it's very stressful. So we have a grant to pay for the services of a nonprofit United Way agency employee to have sessions with us and make it affordable.
I think as noteworthy as our grant, your grantsmanship has been, though I probably do want to reemphasize how important donor support is. We simply couldn't do what we do given the financial straits of so many of our client base.
That's true. I mean, that's the key. That's the piece that's missing. We definitely need the individual donors to make all the pieces work together.
Absolutely. Madison, there's a couple of questions here. People are very interested in storytelling. One is, and you may want to answer them together. Do you offer any workshops on how to write one story? How do folks get in touch with you? And are storytellers trained? Do you recommend some kind of professional advancement? That's what I would ask you if you were a banker.
Great questions. So I do work with individuals, businesses, nonprofits. I work with lots of different types of clients to help fine-tune stories. Do you have to be trained to tell a story? I don't think so. I think telling your story from your perspective and with your personality and your flair is really crucial to, having that story make that impact, because no one can tell your story like you can tell your story, right? But what I help do is, a lot of people go, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what story I have to tell. I don't know how do I communicate this? And, you have these messages that you want to give, you have this impact that you want to make, but you have this whole life that you've lived. So how do we, connect the dots and, fine tune it so that it's really impactful? But, no one sat down and told me, like, here's how you write a poem. So it's everybody has their own kind of flair, but it is nice to have someone to kind of, support you as you're starting to untangle your story, because a lot of people come to me and they're like, I feel tangled. I don't know where to start. I don't know where this went. I don't know where this goes. And so to have someone kind of work through it with you, is very helpful. So I do offer that. I do offer help. My website is toldcoaching.com. So that's a really good way to get in touch with me. My poetry page, if anyone's on Instagram, I'm very active on there and respond very easily on there. It's Told Poetry. So my business is Told. So Told Coaching and Told Poetry is where you will find me.
And is there information on acquiring your book?
Well, of course there is. Any author, I have it right here. So this is my book, Dear Mirror, and it's available on Amazon. So if you just go to Amazon, type in Dear Mirror and my name, and it should pop up for you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we're almost at the end, but we're asked, how are children responding to the shift in telehealth? Is it possible to do telehealth with children? O'Connell, maybe that one's for you.
Yes, it is. It's interesting for the teenagers. They love it because they're more comfortable in their own bedroom than coming into an office, and we're a very business-like kind of office. And so we found that they have been very open about telling us what's going on. For kids, it takes a little skill from our play therapist, but they've gotten very good at this, of doing virtual play therapy and TheraPlay and figuring out ways to engage the kids. So yes, definitely. Kids can be treated through telehealth. One thing that's kind of interesting is that we had some, sometimes parents were not engaged as often at Fairview, but while they were able to sort of watch us work with their kids, they started getting closer and coming in and being part of that. And we've been able to connect stronger with the parents also.
That's excellent. Let me just give you all a little feedback that's coming in on some of the chat as well. We're reminded, thanks to United Way, one of our ongoing supporters, and all the work that they do for us. If you were unable, let me spell the name of Madison's website. It's Told Poetry, all one word, TOLDPOETRY, spell that right, .com. And I think that's the most important. Thanks to all of you. David, thank you for joining us. Madison, thank you again for your story. It's just remarkable. O'Connell, as always, it really is a pleasure to work with you. And thank you all for joining us. I think that concludes our program for this evening.
Thank you.